So I think this is like one of the best videos that have ever existed for at least classic World of Warcraft, the NOTA speed run of AQ40. I want to talk about how they ended up getting the fastest run, a little bit of the tech, a little bit of good RNG, bad RNG, and just talk about the run. So first thing to mention here is how they start just running right in, right? The whole idea of this AQ40 is cleave, cleave, cleave. It's really that simple. I don't really have a whole ton of analysis to say for this first bit of trash. Like there's not much to it, right? It's just fast pace of pulling. I do think that maybe there's some adaptation possibility here for how this first area could be faster in terms of like perfect tech. I don't know. Um, but in terms of like how is this raid going to get faster in 2025 compared to the 2020 version that we're seeing here? I think that's one of the big questions. The level of damage is absurd in the current version of Fresh with everyone having rank 14 gear. If you look at the gear in this run here, I want to say maybe half of them have rank 14. I'm not going to be able to show you the logs to prove that. If you look at some of the different character pains here, like this guy has CTS and Maladath, right? So are those great weapons? Yes. Does he have badge and stuff? Yes. But the reality is the gear level on the Fresh server is already at the level that it was at the end of the phase of AQ40. And obviously, people are going in with more knowledge, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how AQ40 evolves over the next couple weeks. People are already pulling off like sub 40-minute runs pretty comfortably. So how does a sub 40-minute run go to a sub 30, sub 25-minute run, that kind of stuff? And again, a lot of these guys are playing on era where you're able to do more and more of these speed runs. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the evolution. So first thing to say here, this is the first big piece of Nota tech. Goes in with a lip here and grabs and Petrie's mobs together. There are a limit of 5 Petries available in this version of AQ40 on Fresh now. I don't think that that limitation was previously in here. So I believe all the mages Petried on what you're seeing here, the quote unquote Nota pull. This is the big piece of tech. And again, um, it's going to be questionable to see how this is developed. There's some question if we go back to the phase one of how Fresh went, logs were spliced together by the guild that actually had the fastest clear time bricked, but the log community, the log admins, were not a fan of logs being spliced together. The reason that the logs were spliced together is the distance of how a pull like this was happening in Molten Core, right? So a bunch of people were on one side of Molten Core and a bunch of people were on the other side of Molten Core. And they weren't able to track one set of logs that had all of the information needed. So they had to add information between the two logs. And the question is if that same thing is done for this notable here, right? Like, how is it possible that these guys are so far away and able to do this while this pull is happening over here? And the question seems to be answered with the fact that there's like a longer render distance, allegedly. So I guess it's like 1,000 yards in AQ40 and 100 yards in Molten Core or something like that is apparently the question. So you see how the mobs are like running back and forth here. Do we see mages being petring? I'm not sure if you see petries going off. You just see bops. So the mages get bopped here. And they're just going ham and blasting down all these ads. So again, this is the big piece of tech. Sorry to get distracted a little bit with like the log side of things, but I think that's relevant, right? Like, is this pull going to be possible in the current version of logs? I'm not sure. If it's not, I think that is kind of lame because that is what made this run so legendary, is how they were able to pull that off. If you notice, the tank was just going absolute giga threat mode where they were able to grab all the mobs. I mean, obviously, it's not like the mages were DPSing, they know how to play their class. But still, all the healers, what is that? How many healers are there? Let's count that. One, two, three, four, five, 4 to 5 healers. So, um, yeah, using everything that they can to generate some threat there, some different thorns and stuff. Additional AoE trinkets were used as well, and then they're just blasting down all these ads. So while that's happening, rest of the raid is doing bug trio. Just very interesting fight there. So 5 minutes into the raid now, and they're starting Sartura. Outside of that pull, there are a couple other pieces of tech, but generally it's just fast pacing, cleaving, and not dying. That's really what AQ40 is. There's no big invis skips or super, I don't know, involved stuff. I feel like AQ40 is pretty straightforward. So it's going to be fun to see all the raids as they continue. This part here, nothing really to say other than the fact that this guy is just so far in advance, right? So notice how the raid here is able to mount up and run forward, while this one guy has all these ads and has just moved up. So that's happened while they're still fighting Sartura. They pull this first set of ads back, and then the guy just runs, runs, runs. So I think that is an interesting little piece of tech. I don't know if it's really worth it. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. I guess it is. Like, look how far he's able to go. They're able to get halfway up. I find it interesting they don't run on the inside though. So, like, in terms of lost time here, the fact that these guys are not playing NASCAR and all running on the inside to me is one of the wildest pieces of AQ40 tech when you look back at it. The way that they're running in the middle here, they don't understand geometry. Like, doesn't make sense, right? Why aren't you running on the inside and running faster? NASCAR. EU doesn't have NASCAR, I guess. They have the fancy big sports stuff, whatever you call it. F1. All I know is F-150. So note here how they pull Fankris and the other ads together. The fact that they pull all these crawlers like this means that they're going to able to mount up and just run farther. I find it interesting though, the comparison, a lot of times what you're going to see is raids now, they're pulling Fankris over here in comparison. So they start this up fast. Um, if they're able to drag over, right? So I don't know, a little bit of an adaptation. I don't know which is the right answer there. So I feel like they do have pretty quick freezes there. Only 3 mages, but that was a pretty fast process and fast shatter. So just thinking how you can get Vis down quicker is important. And I feel like their Vis kill was pretty exceptional. They did use a fair amount of sappers there though, which I find interesting. Upcoming here, for those that sappered here, they're not going to have it for the Gigapole. Their Gigapole didn't really work out. And again, in terms of time save, there definitely is a little time save here if they had like a perfect Gigapole and then could have mounted back up. So one of the rogues has run forward already and is trying to set up the Gigapole, but it doesn't seem like it went too well. only got a couple packs. So they all come running in here, and you can. I don't want to make the comms too loud,
Okay, let's go in.
and I don't
Remember
want
to
to get
fab.
my
Sky, pick
thing
up what you can. Yeah.
DMCA'd. So they're just like, deal with it, deal with it. It is what it is. So, um, the tank shield wall is there too, which I find interesting.
I need 3 of them.
And now it's loud. I'll have to fix
Forward, push
it.
forward.
Crumbling with comms. Okay, so we're back. Not perfect here, right? Like this could have been better. Could have been all of, I don't know. I don't know if it's possible to get everything a little bit cleaner, but I think there has to be the possibility for this area to have everything where everyone's blasting it all down at once a little bit more. Notice how they drag Hoo Hoo. This is an area though that you do have to have a little bit of respect for AQ40 at any level. A lot of bosses you can just drag and just run with it and it's not a big deal. Hoo Hoo's not that way. Hoo Hoo's a boss that can kill a lot of people really quickly, very high damage output, so gotta take it seriously. Same with these mobs here. If you ever pull two of these at once, it's basically a death sentence. I'll be very interested to see if we see a single time that a raid is able to pull it off where a double pull is not a wipe. Notice how that one exploded there, and they're going to start calling out the importance of batching. Back in phase 5 when this was batching was different. 400 milliseconds versus like the 15 millisecond batch window that we have now, I believe, or whatever it is, 30 milliseconds. It's totally different, right? Was it 200? Maybe it was 200, not 400. Anyways, totally different in terms of how it felt and the ability to batch your executes. Everyone saved their rage at the end when the mob is at like 5 to 10%, and they're just able to reliably never have to deal with an explode if they do that properly. And I don't think that that's quite as easy as it is to do that on Era. So it is interesting to see the slight subtle differences in the game mode as things go on. Unfortunately, in Nax right now, KT is 2 minutes different. So I feel like it's kind of hard to compare the two game modes for that sense alone. Obviously, on Fresh, there is also no buff cap or debuff cap, and that really does add a little bit in terms of the output and safety that they're able to have a little bit more just overall efficiency because of the extra buffs and debuffs. So on Twins, they use a Paladin for tanking on one side and a Warlock on the other side. I've seen a lot of times where Warlocks are pretty easily able to have one Warlock tank both sides. I feel like that's the Giga Gamer play from the Warlock, is that you don't really even need the Paladin to do the King's spam because you just have a really good Warlock. But maybe at the same time, if a mage wants to blast, it's just not possible. My thing is, though, that mages just don't really matter if you look at the amount of damage on this fight at the end. Mage damage is just not much. Like, except that it doesn't matter and it is what it is, and that's fine. So that would kind of be my end take here. Note where they're positioning the bosses. They're trying to have as little run between as possible and just have it optimally where the boss is going to die on the other side, where melee are already on the other side, so they're able to go in quickly. This right here is what made the run so good. This is an insane pull. They all sapper this first pack, which I feel like in retrospect, really big mistake. If they had all saved their sapper for another like 30 seconds here, would have had a lot more impact as all these ads come in now. So they have 3 captains currently. The big thing is, I feel like this right here was the first time that dummies made a huge difference in a rank 1. Up to this point, target dummies have just not been as big of a thing back in 2019, 2020 Classic. And in this point, this is when dummies are just like godly, where they just save people's lives 100% and they just soak a ton of damage. So that, in addition to the fact a fair amount of people did Petri here, you aren't going to be able to have that many Petris used in the current version of Fresh because of cringe logs. So it is what it is, right? Have to adapt. I'll be curious to see if a pull like this ever happens again, or if they just try and have more steady pacing in the other runs that we see. I don't think this was completely planned to happen like that. It just happened and they dealt with it and handled it really well. Besides that, it's pretty much just one at a time and cleave, cleave, cleave the whole way to the end. And yeah, I mean, it's really pretty simple, right? Hunter pulls stuff to the raid. In some circumstances, it's dangerous when mobs are in combat for a longer period of time. But for basically all this stuff in AQ40, it's just not quite as big of a deal, besides the mobs that do the mana drain. Those are the one mobs that you do have to be a little bit careful on, where if you're like just not fighting them for a long time and stuck in combat with them, it's can be a death sentence. So yeah, besides that, as far as tech goes, I feel like there's not a whole ton else to mention. They just drag the packs to Oro and have a clean and fast Oro. At this point, once you get to Oro, the run feels a little bit in the bag. I mean, things can go wrong. You can get some bad RNG or a tank could die or something, but it's pretty safe on these last two bosses. So Oro's here is just getting blasted down. Good Death Wish timer from this perspective that we're watching here. Definite gamer. And yeah, all have their mount gear on as they run forward. Sketo's ready to go, checking his gear. And yeah, they're about to start this boss as soon as they get up there now. So get up there, run in. I find it interesting how in this raid, the main tank runs to the side like this. In some raids, you see the tank run into the middle. I think that's scary. I definitely think that's the safer and smarter strat, having the main tank run out to the side like that. Yeah, you just can't have too many melee in the middle. So notice how the main tank not going to be a top damage dealer, so just staying off to the side. And they kill it quickly. Now the big piece of tech, last piece of tech to mention, is how all the healers purposefully die here so that only people in the middle are damage dealers. They're quickly able to kill down below in the middle, and then they're able to get set for this boss quickly. So they do then have to bandage and be a little bit careful here. They have like 3 priests left alive, it looks like, and the druid for Fairy Fire, so lost over 50% of the healers, which is intentional, which is just kind of fascinating to see, right? Anyways, just some thoughts going into what I'm sure is going to be a lot of AQ40 speedruns upcoming. DMF, just a little bit over 2 weeks away at this point, or yeah, it'll be the third, right? So not next reset, but the week after that. Plenty more to talk about. Last thing to mention here is just how crazy the ID was, right? No lashers that they had to deal with. So that's why the tech getting a little bit messed up with the Gigapull before Hoo didn't matter. And the fact they only had one Mind Slayer meant that they could just cleave like crazy after Twin Emps. Anyways, GG's, just talking about AQ40 more. Hope you enjoy.